Public service announcements. I see Evelyn Thoren here to talk to us about ATEF.
Evelyn Thoren, 18 Pinewood Road. So a lot of people may not know what the Arts and Technology Education Fund is, so I thought I'd just give a little bit of a background so that people will understand where it was. It's hard to believe that George Ripsman and myself were here 22 years ago to present it as a warrant article to the Board of Selectmen for that spring town meeting. It's also been a year since I stood before you and we made some updates to our bylaw that was approved at that town meeting in 1996. And with regard to that, I know that there's some information that's on the town website that needs to be updated also, as I was taking a look at what was on there today. And it was started in order to be able to have another available grant source for our staff in the Chelmsford Public Schools. At the time, there were a lot of grants that were drying up, and teachers were limited with what they could do creatively on their own. The Arts and Technology Education Fund Committee is made up of 9 members. It is appointed by the town manager in alternating 3-year cycles like all of the other appointments that you have for the committees in town. We are governed by the bylaw. There's a lot of leeway that's in there with the members, but we try to follow everything as specific as we can to what it was that was approved by the town meeting. The purpose of this was not only to provide money, but to provide an opportunity for teachers to become more creative with how they could supplement the existing curriculum in the Chelmsford Public Schools with programs or events, supplies, different things like that. And when it talks about arts and technology, it covers a wide range of territory. So it also has been a trendsetter in some cases, because we will see one year where a teacher applies for something, and then the next year, then we have applications for 5. One year it was 8 of something. And then we go back to the director of technology, or we go back to the appropriate department head or curriculum coordinator in the Chelmsford Public Schools and say, there's a trend here, all of your teachers are looking at this. This is something that you should be looking at putting in the school budget in order to be able to help them do their job better. The funding source is the real estate tax bills. There's a checkoff for that. Or you can round up, or if you know that your bank is paying all of, or whatever your lender would be paying the real estate tax bills, if anybody's listening and they would like to make a donation, they can easily go to the town treasurer and tell them that they want to make a donation, and they'll gladly take your money. And you can even round up your tax bill as long as they know that that's what you're using that money for, that it's designated for that particular amount. And it was interesting last year when I took a look at some of the financials, is that some people are rounding up 25 cents, 50 cents, 75, 78 cents, so they're rounding up to the next dollar. But there was somebody that had rounded up to the next 100 to make it even. So instead of paying 57 something, they paid 5,800. So it was very interesting to see that people are even going up even further than just things that's under $1. And I've been here before and said that if every real estate tax bill that goes out and those households only pay $1, we'd have more than $9,000 that we would be able to distribute amongst the staff in the Chelmsford Public Schools. It also is a tear-off in your excise tax bill, and how timely, because I received mine today. So on your excise tax bill, if you want, you can also donate to the Arts and Technology Education Fund. We also have a program that parents can designate a certain amount of money for a donation to the Arts and Technology Education Fund in the name of a teacher, because the law has restrictions on how much money teachers can receive from parents and or groups of parents. So that's another method of doing that. Our application cycle starts January 1st and it ends March 31st. So I'm here today to announce that we're in this 2018 application cycle for the Arts and Technology Education Fund. I also noticed that on your agenda that if anybody doesn't have the application, that there is an ATEF grant application PDF file that they can access through the Town of Chelmsford website. We also have our interviews. We do a screening process. We have interviews that are in May, and then, as you well know, we come before your board early in June in order to make those awards. But we'd also like to make sure that we not only thank the support that we've received from the administration in the town, but also thank those taxpayers that have donated to this fund in the past. So does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Evelyn? Thank you. It's a great program, and we look forward to the awards coming up later this year.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Okay, we're now to the open session part of the meeting. Is there anybody here that would like to address the board at this time on any topic?
Good evening, Brian Latina, 15 Jesse Road. I'm a town meeting, precinct 4 town meeting rep, and I am running for re-election this April.
If you don't mind, I hope this is not a campaign announcement, or?
It is not.
Okay.
It is not. I'd like to address the board on the topic of the project on Turnpike Road. This morning when I was driving out of my street on Jesse Road, I came across a 53-foot lowboy trailer parked, blocking the entire right-hand lane, all the way within 2 feet of the yellow line, double yellow lines, with a truck parked in front of that, moving heavy equipment without a detail officer. I did ask the police to intervene and take a look and see what was up. That was at 150 Turnpike. We also had some issues around 53-foot trucks driving down across Mill Road and into the housing area opposite that onto Julio Street. 53-foot trailers are unusual on that street with heavy equipment on it. And the driver told one of our residents when they followed the driver back that they couldn't make the turn up into the engineering property because it's too tight. I did notice that Turnpike Road and Mill Road, the metal guardrail is smashed. That's also a tough turn to make and a very steep hill. The driver also informed the resident that they're going to be working on Turnpike Road shortly in the 104 area, and I'm very concerned that we're going to have the same kind of traffic problems in there. Heavy equipment in that area is unusual, and it could be dangerous, as the truck was today. So I'm concerned that someone will be killed due to just the work projects that are going on. So we need to have detail officers, and we need to take special attention to that. And on a positive note, since the planning board has approved the 168-unit property at 104, and that may move forward, I would like to offer some suggestions, first of which is Turnpike Road at Golden Cove and Billerica Road has traffic that goes through the red light from Billerica Road from the town hall here, this direction through towards Billerica. They typically in the morning, there's 1 to 3 cars that go through the yellow and or red lights. School bus went through that this morning, and if my wife hadn't been paying attention, she would have been hit by a Chelmsford school bus passing that. They speed along that to make that light. That has to stop if we add 1,100 new cars to Turnpike Road. The light on Turnpike Road, I'll just run through a few ideas. Light on Turnpike Road as you face Golden Cove Road needs a baffle in it. And by that I mean both the green light and red light are visible to people facing north on Turnpike Road. I'll pass this along to the police department as well. You can see a green light and a red light at the same time. If you don't know the area, you could very well go ahead and lurch forward and kill someone. 129 Road has, I noticed they're cutting trees down along that. We have some trees on Turnpike Road and also on Mill Road that need cutting down. Opposite the handicap school on Mill Road, there's a great big pine, probably 2 or 3 feet across, that could fall on someone and kill them. These are safety issues that need to be attended to. Turnpike Road has at least a dozen trees that are in danger and a couple of them that are actually leaning, broken off at the bottom. Those need to be fixed. Traffic concerns, we have safety issues, we have concerns about that property, and we also, interesting, we have collected over 600 signatures, actually a few more, on the project in question, looking at housing density in the 129 district. Over 600 voters have signed a petition that this board felt was too confusing for the voters to be allowed to vote on, and 600 people have said they understand. In fact, we've had people from Westford and Lowell and Chelmsford and Carlisle that are going back to their boards of selectmen and saying to create an equal footing, we should not have to collect 2,500 signatures in order to get a non-binding question on the ballot. I think our selectmen a few weeks ago passed a question that allows the voters' opinion, non-binding resolution, with 3 votes, 3 signatures, if you will. The public should have equal footing, and we should be allowed to consider a non-binding question as in density, 19 versus 30. Our planning board recently commented that maybe 30 units per acre would be okay, and they might consider that. Right now, our multifamily housing is 4 to 6 units per acre. 30 is excessive. The project on Mill Road is 108 units on a cliff. The project on Turnpike is 168 units. 1,100 new cars, 365 parking spaces. That's a lot of people. If you add about 100 kids to that project, that's $30 million to educate them for 13 years that they would need $1,500 or $15,000 a year. So those are some considerations for it, and I'd like the board to consider waiving the 2,500 signature requirement to get a non-binding ballot question on our April ballot, so that you will know, and town meeting will know when we bring up this question at town meeting, how the voters feel. We will be sending out a postcard to those 600 voters and the rest that we collect, depending on how you'd like to address that. So I'd like you to reconsider, maybe waive the 600, look at 600 votes instead of requiring us to get 2,500 for the non-binding question about density. I think you might be able to do that even at this meeting.
No, we can't.
You can't.
It's not on our agenda tonight.
Okay. And then I'd like to leave you with, we did go to the ZBA and discuss the errors made during the planning board, we wanted to, discussion. However, the zoning board advised us that they had no jurisdiction to listen to an abutter at a ZBA meeting. And the implication was that the ZBA can only listen to a landowner or a developer, and not the abutters that are also impacted by someone's project. I found that very disturbing. I found that to be unacceptable as a town meeting rep. And if our ZBA truly only works for the developer, I have a problem with that, both as a citizen of this town and as American. I did bring up the issue of equal treatment under the law. I think that if the developers are allowed to come in, stand at this microphone with the ZBA for $500, that's what it costs. Our chairman of the ZBA did not know that there was a fee associated with someone standing at that microphone, which I found appalling. And I also found that if an abutter has to go to land court, paying thousands of dollars, get a planning board decision that the developer doesn't like, can come to this microphone for $500, that is not acceptable. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And if you'd like to sign our petition, we'll be at the library for the next couple of weeks. We have, I believe, till February 20th to get 2,500 signatures to get a non-binding resolution to make our rules, to understand our rules about multifamily housing. 4 to 6 units per acre versus up to 30, according to what the planning board has in mind for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to address the board during open session? Okay, thank you. Go on to committee vacancies.
The following committee vacancies as of February 12th, 2018. The Board of Appeals has 1 associate member. The Center Village Master Plan Implementation Committee has 1 vacancy. The Civic Committee has 4 vacancies. The Community Action Program Committee has 2 vacancies. The Cultural Council has up to 21 vacancies. The Energy Conservation Committee has 2 vacancies. The Holiday Decorating Committee has 4 vacancies. The Parade Committee is welcoming all applicants. The Public Celebration Committee has 5 vacancies. The Recycling Committee has 1 vacancy. The Sign Advisory Committee has 2 vacancies. The Skate Park Committee also has 2 vacancies. The Tree Committee has 1 vacancy, and the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee has 1 vacancy. If you are interested in serving on a board, town board or committee, please apply at the town website or contact the town manager's office.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is the 101 Mill Road Restrictive Covenant. We have several versions that are in our packets this evening. I guess the second one is probably the most viable one. It's the one from our town council, and seems to be the cleanest. Does anybody have any comments or discussion on this topic tonight? Sure.
So, after comparing first to the second, there's some subtle differences. I think the first one was the one that, if I'm wrong, didn't say so, but was the one that Historic Commission sat and went through line by line by line and came up with. I noticed only really maybe 3 or 4 changes between the first and the second. One was the title. The second was the second whereas paragraph was added to describe the lot itself in the maps. The last was who's signing it, and I think we're still missing, it says in here single family only, doesn't say multifamily, or 2-family. So those are the 4, I think, differences I found between the 2.
Is the clause about the inn, is that part of the
I don't think
most recent one?
it's not in any of them.
It's not in anyone, because he made a note on the
He made a
file.
note,
We have
but
to change it if
right.
the end. And I'm not sure what they're asking for us to approve in town meeting as far as the end goes.
Well, there's a part of tonight's agenda where we're gonna look at the warrants. One of them is exactly that one, and the person who can best answer it, I think, is Mr. Latina. I don't know if he's going to stay for that.
But tonight, we're not going to be, we'd have an opportunity for them to come in when we make our votes on those warrant articles.
So we're leaving all of these just out there right now, these
So-
versions.
These versions,
Yeah.
as far as the restrictive covenant, I mean, if we're ready to vote on it this evening, I mean, as Ken said, there are some differences that maybe need to be cleaned up again.
Right now, the inn is not part of the official document.
And I don't think it can be.
So, but can town meeting then change it?
Change the covenant? No, that's ours. That's for this board to decide.
Which is first, the chicken or the egg? In other words, town meeting has a warrant in front of it that an inn is allowed.
Well, not
But
really.
But it's not required.
Right, then they would have to go to zoning. Then it would have to go to town meeting to change the zoning
Right.
of that lot later.
Does that affect our vote on the covenant at all?
Well, no, because it references bylaws, and the bylaw would have to be changed. And that would be up to the,
Was there some mention earlier that one of the items that is allowed is an inn or a bed and breakfast? Is that true, not true? I thought there was some reference to that is allowable, not mandated, but allowable.
It depends on what the extent of the inn or bed or breakfast is. I think that's what council explained at the last meeting.
right.
And he was going to come back with some
No, he-
definition.
But we know, because we don't know what's being proposed.
Right, and he actually suggested that we not go into a lot of detail about that, because it could affect our further, subsequent negotiations with the buyer, if that is the buyer. So, I mean, again, it does reference bylaws, and whoever purchases it would have to abide by the bylaws. If the bylaws have to be changed, it would be up to that person to put forward a zoning change.
Right, so what we did, am I correct that what we did agree to the last meeting was that we will not put it up for sale until after the election?
We did say after the town meeting. Yes.
I mean, I don't have a problem if it goes up to sale before the town meeting. I don't know if that muddies the water at all, but all I know is that from what we've discussed is, I mean, unless you're telling me you want to delay it again
Beyond.
for review, another 2 weeks, or, I'm not sure, what's the goal?
I mean, I'm also okay with putting it up for sale before town meeting.
I think we
I-
voted on that last time.
No, we didn't vote on it.
discussed it.
We discussed
I
it.
think we
And
kind of
it-
agreed on it.
And at that time, I got the sense that, of the board, that there was not an agreement from this board that we would wanted to do it before town meeting. If that has changed, then we still need to finalize the wording on this document, which, as Ken said, there are some differences, and I think we need to clean that up first.
I think there's no sense in hurrying, and if we have some things that have to be changed, I think we just get it, 100%. In other words, just review it, and if there's gonna be
The only, yeah,
more
the only,
changes.
I think the only thing that I came up with that I would want to see change from what's in here, that we worked on with the Historic Commission, is just the fact that it says single family. If that said single family and two family, I think the rest of the document would be acceptable.
Which version are you looking? 'Cause
The first one that's in your
The
book.
first one I thought is, I'm looking
one
at, it
that has-
says single or two-family.
It's-
Although,
And the first, at
The-
the top it
you're
says
saying-
So you
single, but at
just-
the bottom it says
Okay.
single.
okay, but if you do recall, town council did say that the title, he thought, presented an issue, the preservation restriction, that had some legal implications. That's why he changed it to a covenant.
I thought the information that we got from the letter that I read from the state basically said they didn't understand any of the enforceability of the covenant, so good luck with that. So, I mean, I'm not necessarily comfortable changing the language just, and then having, you know, I don't really want to see another 7 North Road where we have, we think something's going to happen in one way, and then we're gone 20
Right.
years down the line, and
So my
some
underst-
lawyer just says, you know what, that's not enforceable because it's weak language.
Well, my understanding there is not that it's just they weren't gonna give us a letter that said this was okay in their book, unless we use the entire 30-page, so.
I understood that, but
Right.
I also thought that specifically the language of that title, they just didn't recommend going forward with that either. So that was how I read that letter.
I took it to mean we either go all the way back to that original document, or we're on our own.
Well, I don't want to be the selectman that spent several months putting together a document that really doesn't have any weight in court. It just seemed, are we trying to protect this or are we not? And that's.
Then we go back to the 30-page document.
Well, I mean, I think our town council has, I don't think he would bring forward something that's not enforceable. I would hope he wouldn't.
I mean, I did ask Paul, on Friday, I called him and said, he said, no, it's acceptable what you're doing. He doesn't.
Was there any resolution to the fact that the original document said that if there was a case of arbitration, it would be, the Board of Selectmen would have the final say? Now it's kind of, there's a nebulous.
It's the appeal
Resolution.
process. In the document we have that we worked up with the Historic Commission, it basically says the appeal's with the commission, and that's it. It doesn't say you're allowed then to appeal it to.
Right, is that what we want?
But the one this one that Paul,
In the second
That-
draft,
it does have that,
it does have. that
the
it go-
appeal,
That it goes to the Board of Selectmen.
correct.
Right.
And I think the word, I mean, as far as I feel like that should remain in there.
And that's not in this version, is it?
No, the first one does not have that. The first one, it remains with the Historic Commission. The second one, it goes to, it's still signed by the Historic Commission, but the appeal process is with the Board of Selectmen. The last one, signed by the Board of Selectmen, and has the appeal process with the Board of Selectmen. So there's like 3 steps there.
Well, I'm talking about the document. There are 3 documents in here.
Yep,
Which one includes final say by the Board of Selectmen?
I think the last 2.
The second, right, no.
And the middle one is the one you favor.
The first one is the one I favor.
The middle one is the one I favor. So I think we still might have some
The
issues here.
first one, in the way it's inserted in the book,
Yes.
first one is the one that's called,
That is one that the Historic Commission drafted, signed off on, said that they were comfortable with.
the historic
First
preservation.
one.
Yes.
So you wanted to say historic preservation.
You know, at this point, Glenn,
You know, it,
This
you know,
is
we've
the
been
one that
wrangling
they
over
signed
this,
off
but-
on,
But
so.
we seem to be going
In
around and
circles.
around.
I agree.
Is it possible that we can set up a meeting with the Historic Commission here, with Town Council here, with all the interested parties
Well,
here?
I mean-
And try to get to the end of it?
But we have gone around in circles, and I think we would just go around in circles again. I think we see what they want, we see what we want, and either we come to some compromise between those two, or decide on one of those two, or,
I mean, I really don't think a court's gonna trip over the title of it. I think they're gonna look at the paragraphs inside of it, but.
Well, that's not what I think Town Council implied. That a historic preservation's gotta be the big document.
We do that, we vote on it the same night we're gonna vote on all the warrant articles?
we could do that.
I think that's
We could maybe see if we could have town council make those changes that we talked about, reference to single-family or two-family, and what was.
Well, I think someone has to, because, I mean, I reached out to Paul, told him what Historic Commission and myself worked on. He said this document would do that, and fine, but if someone else has another idea, I don't know how that gets conveyed to Paul, because someone's gotta,
Well, we
reach out
can,
to
we
him
can
and convey
obviously
that.
convey it to Paul. I mean, that would be my feeling, would be to go with the second one with that change.
And just for the record, what does the third one represent?
the third one was the original one.
With edits?
Sorry, hold on, Mike shaking
Yeah,
his
with
head.
a lot of
No,
edits.
because it's not 30 pages.
The first,
Exactly.
the
Oh.
first one, if I may, Madam Chairman, the first one should be the original that's been marked up by Deb Taverna. The second one should be Attorney Haverty's
The second one apparently
revisions
is,
accepted, and the last one should show the highlighted differences, what was edited between the Historic District
Okay.
Commission's version and Paul Haverty's version.
so basically, the second one should be the clean version of the third one.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
You know, in the future, it would be helpful if, on the top of the heading said, which version is what, because it doesn't, it's kind of
Yeah, I made notes. I got my own cheat sheet.
hard to
Goodness.
figure
So,
out. I assume the middle one was the cleaned up version of Paul.
that's what I assumed also.
But doesn't really say that.
I mean, we could use, if you use the cleaned up version of Paul's, the only issue that the Historic Commission is gonna have is the appeal process.
Well,
Not the wording of the title?
No?
so.
So the only contentious part is who has final say?
Mhm.
So do you have an issue with the Board of Selectmen having the appeal process?
I think Historic Commission does.
I asked if you do.
I-
You get
well, I
the
mean,
vote.
I've seen them work on this, and I would like to see them get the final decision.
I would agree
But there
with
has to be,
Ken,
there has to
because
be an appeal,
let them go to land court.
okay? That's, you guys, it's okay.
I
Which-
honestly, I don't think that the Board of Selectmen are the experts on historical homes in this town. I think that we are elected for one purpose, and it's not to be that expert. If we are on the Historic Commission, then that's a different passion.
Let me ask you a question, Mike. Do you think that will impact the price at all? The fact if a buyer's coming in and he's going to feel that he would, if there was a contentious issue, that he would be dealt with more fairly by the Board of Selectmen? or that he would feel that the historical commission would be fair on this kind of thing. You feel that will impact the decision to buy or
I
not buy?
don't- I honestly don't know. The bigger issue was the length and the complexity of the preservation restriction that was there. That's what the information came back from the appraiser that John Souza had talked to, and the fact that we had numerous people download it. He didn't make a bid, and I heard through indirect channels that that was it. I don't think it was a question of the appeal process. It was just the restrictions on being able to utilize the structure and make it into something without running afoul of the restrictions therein. So I'm not sure those people were thinking of an appeal at that time. They were just looking at whether or not they could acquire the building and make it a functional one or two family without running afoul of the Historic Commission or Mass Historical.
Paul, do you have any comment? Any insight?
With respect to what?
The
I mean, which
covenant,
aspect of
the
it?
covenant and appealing to the board and,
I mean, my opinion would be, if all the other historic properties in the town go for the historical commission, I don't know why the exception is made on this one.
There's no precedent for it at all.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I'm saying, I don't see any, I don't know what the compelling case is at this unique property that would have to come to this board for appeal from the historical commission.
thank you.
Nothing would ever be easy anyway, after going through the previous one a few years back, was regarding contracts, et cetera. I mean, whoever is the deciding factor will get plenty of legal help from somebody, you know what I mean?
So we will have a motion to go forward with, what are we gonna call it, the second one?
Second one, except for in that first paragraph with the grantor has the right to appeal determination of the Chelmsford Historic Commission of the Board of Selectmen to authorize such alteration by majority vote of the board should be struck.
Right.
Now, I have a question, though, on paragraph 4. And we've gone back and forth on this one, too. It says it shall be perpetual. Is it perpetual, or is it 30 years? And then it references 20 years a little bit later.
I think Paul explained that the last time, that if perpetual gets shot down, it goes to a 30-year. I don't know why it says 20 years after that. Any insight,
Well,
Mike?
why would he put perpetual
I don't-
when we?
I thought he addressed that the last time, and I don't remember off the top of my head what he
Yeah, I
said.
don't remember what
It was
the,
supposed to,
Perpetual
That was
and
renewable.
add 20 years don't seem to go together.
I
they
would
don't.
agree.
supposed to go for
There.
30 years and then be removed for 20
Renewable.
thereafter, I think.
George, any comments?
Oh, I think that's a very important question to answer right there. That's, if you can answer that question, I have no problem. I have no problem with the historical decision.
I think that's the only, that part of the clause is the only question
Yeah.
at this point.
That's it, as far as I'm concerned. If you answer that question, we're all set.
Well, if you
Well,
go,
I thought that there was also the adding the two-family on
Right,
page
yeah.
1.
But-
But also,
The last whereas.
is there anyone here from the Historic Commission that will
There's
say,
somebody here from the Historic Commission.
before we jump to that, though, can I just point out, in the last edition, it is edited to say a restrictive covenant is not perpetual, may be extended, and it does say 30 years in the third version, which is his edited version. So I don't know why that didn't get pulled over to the second
different
version.
in third version?
On paragraph 4?
On paragraph 4, in the third version that's in your book, it says, in the event that determination by court, competent jurisdiction, that the restrictive covenant is not perpetual, it may be extended to additional periods of not more than 30 years by recording at the registry
No,
of
no,
deeds.
but that's, it says that on the second one, but it says 20 years, but still, it references perpetual in the first sentence.
Paragraph 4, for
It's
grantor.
perpetual unless a court determines that it is not perpetual.
Yeah, it shall be perpetual as it is intended to be perpetual restriction held by the government body within the meaning of the gift of purpose in the meaning of ML 184. In the event that the court is determined that it's not, and then it goes into not perpetual.
Right, then it becomes 30 years or 20, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's
The
what, that's
intent
how
is
Paul explained
perpetual
it.
unless
He's
the
gonna
court
argue that
finds
it's
it can't.
perpetual. If the court says you can't do that, then it becomes a 30-year covenant.
But I thought we said we wanted it to be 30 and not perpetual. Wasn't that how we started talking about this to begin with?
I think so.
I don't know, I would agree that why would we want to not to try to save it perpetually if we
Well, that's what
could?
it's saying now, is
Yeah.
that it's perpetual, and if it gets shot down by a court, then it becomes 30 years.
Is it 30 or 20? This one says 20.
Well, in their notes over here, it says 30. I don't know why that didn't pull over. Paul clearly has 30
30 years is
years.
pretty young in the history of this house, and thinking a little further.
Right.
When we get an opinion from Paul, why don't you ask Paul, have that question, and vote on it at the next meeting? I mean, there's no sense going back and forth.
Right, I think there's several questions that we need answered before we can do that. So,
Very
okay,
simple, now we can.
so you have what he needs to, Paul, or Mike, whoever.
So, yeah, and I just want to reiterate, so it's paragraph 1, you're striking the appeal rule to the Board of Selectmen. Paragraph 4, 30 years. And then where was the single family on this version?
The first page, the last whereas.
The second whereas?
The
first
last whereas.
The last whereas? Yes, the last whereas, single family, it should say single family, 2-family residential use of the property. And then are we good?
I still would like to hear
Yep.
from the Historic Commission that they are okay with having restrictive covenant throughout this as opposed to restrictive agreement, or preservation restriction.
Debbie, you authorized to speak for the commission on that?
Hi, Deb Taverna, member of the Historical Commission. I don't think we're hung up on the wording of it. I know if you call it a preservation restriction, then we're falling under the mass laws for preservation restriction, which is the 30-page document. So if you're wanting to simplify this, I think you need to call it a covenant.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
And the rest of it's good.
That was a yes.
Yes.
All right, so we will try this one more time. And hopefully the 42nd time will be the charm.
I'm sure it will be. I have faith.
Thank you. All right, so we have a couple licenses this evening. First is a one-day beer and wine license for the Harrington PTO at the Chelmsford Senior Center. Oh, we do have somebody here to speak on this.
Hi, Teresa Crafts, 120 Crooked Spring Road, the coordinator chair of the trivia night for March 16th. We're asking for a one-day liquor license. It's a fundraiser, parent-only event. We are having it at the senior center. We're just looking to make it really fun with beer and wine being sold by Joe Varnum, who's a town bartender. He's tip certified, not a town bartender, but he's known around town. He works at the CCA, I guess.
Mhm.
So that's all I have.
Okay, anybody have any more questions for Teresa about this fundraiser?
It's tables of 8, so do you guys want a table?
Would we make a team? We got sports. I'm pretty good at history.
I'll pick up the rest, yep. Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day beer and wine license for Harrington PTO Trivia Night to be held March 16th, 2018 at the Chelmsford Senior Center at 75 Groton Road.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, we also have a change in DBA. Apparently, this was something that must have been overlooked.
Yeah, it was caught in the procedural review that, the DBA from the mill house to the establishment, so that way it'll tie all the paperwork together.
Okay,
Just need the technical correction.
okay. Since this is the name by which it's been known since
Yep.
it opened. So do we have a motion for
You may
the,
recall, they weren't sure what they were gonna call it when they were before the board, and that's how it
Make a motion to approve the application for a change in DBA name from the Mill House to the establishment for Matthew Mary's LLC.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have a report from Christopher Ilsley.
Good evening. Christopher Elsley. I'm the Energy Manager for the Town of Chelmsford Public Facilities Department. And tonight I'm presenting the Year 2 M&V report, which is the measurement and verification for the 20-year performance contract that we did with Johnson Controls. So, first slide. So the first part, the important part, is the money. So our guaranteed savings for the Year 2 of the 20-year period is $718,230, made up of $548,000 of measured utility cost avoidance, $92,910 of non-measured utility cost avoidance, and $77,000 of operation and maintenance cost avoidance. The verified period cost avoidance was a total of $735,084, which is a $16,854 surplus. This adds to the cumulative surplus since the installation period of $733,768. The next slide is a breakdown of cost avoidance per energy conservation measure and per town or school building. So if you see along the bottom, this is the total ECM cost avoidance per ECM. And then on the next slide, you would see the totals per building cost avoidance. And this is for Year 2 specifically. Next slide here. So this is a pie chart basically presenting that last information just as a breakdown of category and percentage of the total. As you can see, the solar is one of our largest, and it's pretty similar from Year 1 to Year 2, which is right in line with what it should be. It's just a slight escalation because our savings will increase by a certain percentage each year. The next slide is the same breakdown, but specific to the town buildings versus the school side. Here you can kind of see a difference because the largest is still solar, but the next would be streetlights, which would not be present in the school side, followed by things like lighting retrofits and the HVAC energy management system, and etc. And then on the next slide would be that same breakdown again, but on the school side. Here you can see the solar makes up a much larger portion of that, and the streetlights would be not present because those would be the town side. And then this slide is the renewable energy, specifically the solar. For Year 2, we actually had a lower production than Year 1. We had spoken to our solar operation and maintenance provider, and it seems that it's mostly weather related. There were no major downtimes or anything like that. No mechanical failures or anything like that. It was just a weather dependent anomaly. It was 92% of what was guaranteed for the year. There were 2 sites specifically that were a little bit lower than the rest. One was the Byam, and the other the South Row. So we have a spring preventative maintenance coming up in April and May. We'll take an extra look at those, see if there's some shading, things like that, that might be bringing down the production there. The next slide, that's just a per month breakdown of the production. So you can see, what month specifically might be lacking in production versus their guaranteed production. This would actually start September of 2016, and then the next, the rest of the year was 2017, so January of 2017 to August of 2017. That's the performance period that we're looking at, Year 2. And then finally, this is a breakdown by electric versus natural gas or thermal savings. So the first one is electric. You can see the baseline is what we were spending before the performance contract, so before everything, all the equipment was installed on the town and the school, broken down by the blue and the red. The verified, which is basically the proposed for this year, so what Johnson Controls proposed that we would use this year, and then the actuals in the third bars. So they didn't meet every single time perfectly, but they were within an acceptable percentage that is largely weather dependent anyways. And then the same thing on the thermal side. You can see the actuals are, I believe they're within about 10% of the proposed. And that's all I have for the year two.
Just have one question. Anything in this factor in, like, what kind of a year it was for energy usage, whether it was very cold, very warm?
So these numbers are not, they would call that weather normalized. So these numbers are not normalized in that way.
So any feeling for how they would look if they were weatherized? Does it swing it one way, the other way, pretty much even across the board?
Not sure. I'm not sure on this one, actually. I guess I would have to think back to that winter. I know in some of the schools, we had been increasing a couple set points here and there for the classrooms, things like that. So that would kind of add to that. It would reduce our savings or increase our usage there. But I don't know specifically because I can't. You'd have to look at what they call degree days, which are basically a measure of how much energy should be used on a certain day based on the weather, and they total that for the year, and then it's kind of a complex calculation. So I don't think I would do a good job of just.
So there was a baseline
Yes, sir.
established, a start point,
Mhm.
and then
Right.
if there are variables beyond that, they're really not in the final presentation?
And this one, no.
Would you like to comment, Gary?
Gary Persichetti, in a baseline that they give you, there are degree days that are used as an average. So is it measured to last year and the year before? No. But what it is measured to when they're building the chart for us to decide, what we're going to agree to, there are degree days built into that based on their knowledge of how it has been historically in the past.
So you said a guesstimate.
Yeah, in other words, when you're doing a project like this, the two things that have to happen, and the most important, which was established over 4 years ago with the Energy Committee, is what are we accepting? Like, what temperatures are we accepting in the buildings? What are we agreeing to as far as savings? And all of that gets done. And during that period of time, under their baseline, that would have been considered and put into it, and that's how you have some of your highs and lows. Like this year, as Christopher said, solar production is down. This December was the worst solar produced in probably the last 4 years, between no sun and the temperatures and the fact that it stayed so cold, the snow didn't melt off the panels fast. Our first year out was magnificent. I mean, plenty of warm weather. If you're ever down the lobby here and ever stop and look at the TV, you'd see really spikes of green on there. And, we expect that over the summer. We expect to get a lot of that back. So you don't look at 1 month and say, wow, we're tanking and we're in trouble. And again, as Christopher said, you might look at this and say, oh, gee, this particular thing's a little over. But as he said, we paid the note and we're sitting on $16,000 again in a positive, which means that we've been through 2 years of a 20-year contract. In those 2 years, we've paid our note. We've took back about $40,000. And if we continue to do that for 18 more years, then basically we got $16, $17 million worth of equipment for absolutely no charge to this town, and took all the savings that went with it.
Thank you.
Quick question. I understand what measured utility cost avoidance is.
Yes.
And operation maintenance costs. What is non-measured
Right.
utility?
So those are things like weatherization, insulation, measures that you can't plug something into and see how much energy it's using at a time,
Got it.
and kind of get a good energy calc on that. So they just do an estimated energy savings cost.
So look at the R value, figure out this is probably what you save based upon temperatures and so forth. Okay.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, town manager reports are next.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, I'm pleased to present to you this evening the documents pertaining to the purchase of the Chelmsford Forum. You have the draft, deed documents, and as well as the other items that are required by the state in terms of a MEPR agreement. Even though it's not subject to MEPR in terms of the use, the state requires every party to have a MEPR agreement, and then the disclosure statement, even though there's no disclosure. But these are the documents that have been resolved with the state for a purchase of the forum at the just purchase price of just over $1.1 million, $1,101,771.33. The approval of this will be recorded tomorrow. With the funds will be wired by the finance director, John Souza, and then obviously a warrant will be signed for the accounting office. And so that's how we will do that. So what's needed this evening is a vote from the board to approve and execute the deeds and other related documents for the purchase of the Chelmsford Forum.
If we could have a motion? If we have any questions before a motion, okay. go.
Just one question. In here, it says that part of it is that we have to give 5 days of practice to
UMass Lowell,
UMass Lowell.
that's required.
It doesn't say what a day is. Is there any definition of when you have to give them 5 days?
think it's
Is it
5
24 hours times 5, or is it?
No, it's dates, 5 dates. In other words, if they want to use the forum on February 23rd, that's one date. And then they, and
Is
then,
it
but it's not
24
it's not 24 times 5 in terms of total hours. It's 5 dates.
Right, but they could use it for 24 hours on that date if they so
Theoretically, yeah,
chose.
yeah.
So we couldn't schedule anything else.
Right. But I think if they tried to do that, we have 20 years of practice with them. I think we could go to them into a court of jurisdiction and say, look, Your Honor, for 20 years they've used it for a 3-hour period. Now they're trying to use it for 24-hour period. So I don't think that would be an issue of concern.
Okay.
And speaking with the rink manager, typically they schedule morning practices now because they came up in discussions with the youth hockey and the others during the RFP when they were scheduling, and they said typically UMass Lowell will take morning dates so they won't conflict with any of the schools or youth groups.
As we were probably using in the afternoons, evenings.
I'd be pretty tired after a 24-hour practice, too.
Mm.
Well, they have a lot of students.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve and execute the release deed for the Chelmsford Forum as presented by the town manager.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. The next item I have pertains to the spring annual town meeting warrant. Giving you the latest draft, I'll remind the board that in 2 weeks, you sign the final version and the warrant gets posted, because as you know, it pertains to the election warrant, town election as well as town meeting. That's the 35-day window that we constantly hear of. The only changes that are here from the previous version pertain to land. You'll note that the acceptance of the gift of land in the town center near the rail trail has been removed from this version of the warrant because the Conservation Commission has agreed to accept the land as conservation land, which under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 8C, which is the Conservation Commission enabling legislation, the Conservation Commission can accept the gift of land subject to the approval of the Board of Selectmen. So that's why this would not appear here, and that is the next item on my discussion point. So that's not on the warrant. What instead is on the warrant in place is another transfer of parcel, a 9.89 acre parcel of land located off of Technology Drive and St. Andrews Way, That is a parcel that since our last meeting, that the finance director, John Souza, as a tax collector and custodian of the town, has acquired that parcel for tax possession. It is the wet parcel. Part of it's water, the rest is all wetlands. If you know where that vacant lot is at the end of Technology Drive, it's behind it. And also, the other way at it would be if you came by St. Andrew's Way, it's behind that as well. The owner of the property, which we believe was affiliated with the previous subdivision of property land there, basically just stopped paying taxes on it. There's no benefit value, and the Conservation Commission is interested because they would just leave it as a natural wildlife type of sanctuary. So there's certainly not developable piece of land because it's all wet and wetlands, but they wish to hold it and would recognize it as a piece of conservation property. So that's the only changes to this warrant from what was presented 2 weeks ago from the earlier version.
What was the assessed value?
And then,
You know?
yeah, the assessed value is, I can pull that up on that property. We can get that. It was not a lot. I can pull that right up. And then obviously why the warrant now goes down is also we had another article that would have proposed to do the connection from the rail trail onto the property in the center. That now goes into the hands of the Conservation Commission, who would probably get planning and administrative money from CPC before going to town meeting. So basically, the custody of the property would now go to Conservation Commission. It would be in there. And what we anticipate would happen is that they would consider the idea, have discussions with the town engineer, and then obviously with the land trust, if that were to move forward at this point in time. Thank you.
At 8.9 acres, does that consist of the part of two developments that took place there with the same developer?
Yeah, I believe it came from the development, not of the Technology Drive piece, but of the housing piece that's behind that actually abuts the UMass Lowell property. But this is not contiguous to the UMass Lowell parcel, nor is it contiguous to any other conservation or town-owned land.
Yeah, it goes like UMass, then
Right.
Andrews Way, and then the wetlands, right? It's
Right.
behind all those. And the whole thing is wet, right?
It's wet, it's water and wetlands. There's no upland area at all. So it's, yeah, there is no ability, or, I mean, there's an ability to sell it, but there is no value to sell the property in terms of the market, because of the condition of the land. I mean, it's basically, it's a drainage and detention area. Off that value right now. The land, it was valued at $30,800
Wow.
for,
Acres.
yeah. And it was DH Land LLC was the previous owner out of Burlington, Mass. And the last sale on the property was $1 back in August of 2000.
Something you just said, though, is interesting. You said is it a catch basin runoff from roadway, or is it,
I think it's topography.
is there any
There's no-
pollution in there that we have to worry about?
Yeah, we don't see any our GIS maps don't show any drainage lines going there. Just seems to be a topographic instance of wetlands.
Okay, thank you. You have a question, Glenn?
Yeah, on Article 26, it was sponsored by Brian Latina. He just happens to be here, and I was wondering if I could ask him a question. We'll be making a final vote.
Well, we won't be making a vote until April.
Well, we'll be making a recommendation, won't we?
Okay, make a recommendation in
Yes.
April.
Well, we'll be doing it in 2 weeks.
We'll be
He
voting
may
to
not be here
post
to
it.
answer the question. He
Okay,
happens to
Brian,
be here.
Brian, do you have a minute to answer his question?
Just a couple of
Yes.
simple questions, Brian. Is it the intent of this article to allow one of the uses of 101 Mill Road to be an inn? Simply that? Or is it that it must be an inn? I can't seem to identify which it is that you're saying here.
Yeah, Joan Paley will be doing a presentation to the FinCom within the next month, and she'll define all the whys and wherefores. I'm certainly the proponent on behalf of Ms. Paley, but one of the discussions was a combination inn and museum. So it's in theory, it's probably more like a bed and breakfast. I mean, this is,
Well, the question still is that what it, is this proposing that it must be that? And the reason I said, she may be meeting with finance within a month. We have to decide in 2 weeks.
But you don't
Well,
decide,
it's-
because it's a citizen article, you
Right.
can't keep it off the warrant.
No, just trying to,
whether
trying
you,
to understand what
yeah,
it is
whether
that
you,
you're looking
whether you
for.
vote, I understand, whether you want to vote yes or no to it as selectmen.
Or if it needs, tweaking in terms of the language to make it more understandable, that's all.
I mean, it is a non-binding article.
Well,
it's
I
not-
mean, it's a town warrant article. Town meeting could certainly add, make amendments and have further discussion on it, fine tune it. I just, always, I like to point out that the tradition of New England is that most buildings on every corner of every intersection that we drive past today, 200 years ago, were typically taverns and places where you could stop in. I think that's kind of the vision. Not unlike the Colonial Inn, that's a really big one in Concord. It, wouldn't be that level. But lately, all over the country, you find the bed and breakfast type places that are just simply very small places, historically correct, that people from other places come to and visit. And this is simply a place like that, I think, in her vision. I'm speaking a little out of school here because I'm not positive of exactly the vision.
Well, my only concern here is, I have no problem if it's a bed and breakfast or an inn. I've stayed at many of them. They're great for the communities they're in. It looks like a nice location up high and so forth. But I don't want to say that it has to be that. And that's what I'm not quite understanding in what she's asking for.
Right.
And who the ownership is.
Right. I think a lot of it is based on grants and change of ownership. I'm sure the town might be interested in maintaining the ownership. Town meeting might decide to do that, depending on her presentation. I think I'd leave it to town meeting to help decide, the exact format, that whether we would sell it, keep it.
Well, it'd be nice if she came in and saw us in a couple
Yes.
of weeks, if that's
Yes.
possible.
I'm trying to get her together with, like I said, the FinCom was first pass, so that she can give her vision of the financial side of this, and then come to selectmen like they normally would.
Okay.
Can I
Yeah,
ask
thank
can I
you.
ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So if this does pass, and I don't know who answers this, does it then have to go back to town meeting be rezoned?
That would be up to whatever they would do.
Depends what they're proposing.
So this article doesn't
Could be dealing
really,
with this in the
it's
fall
not
town
clear.
meeting.
You're right,
Right.
Glenn, it's
Yeah.
not clear. It's,
Just to say, residential property can be used for educational areas. You could argue that as a museum or a place where people could stay overnight in a museum, the Ecotarium does that. They have overnight stays. That doesn't mean the zoning isn't educational. There are other ways to look at these things. Just takes a good lawyer.
okay, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
And the only thing I'll point out on the warrant that differs the last time is I've removed the article regarding stormwater enterprise fund.
Is it all over?
Well, at this point, and Pat, you probably may have received an update at NIMCOG, or you will at your next meeting, but at this point, there's still no resolution or clear path to a resolution regarding the stormwater regulations that are scheduled to be effective on July 1st of this year. And here we are at mid-February.
Okay.
So that's the change in the warrant. So again, I'll bring you a final version in 2 weeks. The Conservation Commission's eyeing another parcel for transfer that's out, that may go on the final version, that is out up off of Oak Hill, right at the end of the property, adjacent to,
Ledge Road?
no, what's the name?
Not the North Congo Church,
No, the other end. Who's the property owner?
Joy Hall?
No.
not Lemisure or.
No. It's at the,
Matt?
We'll find out next
Gilmet,
next
right, adjacent to
meeting.
the Gilmet property, right next to the Gilmet property, exactly at the edge. And it's right off near the paper road, so we're sort
Left-hand
of,
side?
yeah, we're sort of scratching heads wondering why it wasn't considered when the town did the transfer of conservation parcels about 7 or 8 years ago. And we think it may have been passed over because of the fact that the Oak Hill project was under
Might have still been
active
operating
use.
out of there.
Exactly, so, but anyway, I just wanted to let you know that's also coming. And speaking of that, the next item on my list report is copy of the correspondence that was received from Win Stanley Enterprises, seeking to donate the western 2.6 acres of the land adjacent to the rail trail off of Cushing Place, as part approved by an A&R plan from the planning board. So I did provide a copy of the A&R plan so you could see the property. Again, it's not developable. So I did forward this off to the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission met last Tuesday evening, and they voted to request that the land be accepted by the town for conservation land. And that's subject to the Board of Selectmen's approval. So if there are no objections from the board, I'll have council work with the Win Stanley Enterprises Council to prepare a deed, which would then come back for this board for approval, and then it would be a parcel of conservation land for the town. Again, this parcel has no frontage, it's not developable, and I think the intent with the discussions of the development in the center was to allow this for the improvement or access to the Beaver Brook area, as well as perhaps a connection to the land trust land that's known as the Bartlett Woodlot. And then the last item I have under my report, it pertains to the DLTA funding from the Commonwealth, the District Local Technical Assistant Grant program that's been released by the administration. And the board may recall there's a quick turnaround on these applications. We originally sought and to see if we could qualify as a housing choice community under the governor's new program. We do not, we're not aware of any community in the immediate area that meets the requirements under those new standards, because although we've permitted projects, we've not constructed those. So we may qualify a year or two out if some of these units that have been permitted go to construction. So that fell off of our list for DLTA funding. So instead, we developed two DLTA projects, which would basically provide us with the technical support from the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments. One has to do with utilizing the Economic Development Self-Assessment Tool, or EDSAT. You may have, over the last couple of years, have seen other communities have utilized this tool.
Almost all the other NEMCOG communities already done this, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And so we would now have that done. It's probably timely, given our, Route 129 initiative. So that would be one portion of this program. And then the second one would be to establish a permitting guidebook to provide a clear path to economic development and housing projects. So permitting guidebook might be helpful as well. So we've submitted these two projects. The permitting guidebook would be 50 hours of time, and the EDSAT self-assessment tool would be equivalent of $4,500 in terms of value. So that's what we've submitted. So again, what we would anticipate, given the process, is that later this calendar year, we'd come back and have the results of those efforts and have them presented here to the board and the community. And that's my report for this evening.
Okay, thank you. I see you have an appointment.
I do have an appointment to the Chelmsford Center for the Arts Advisory Committee. Catherine, or Kit Harbison, would be the appointee, and that would be for a one-year term expiring June 30th, 2018. So it's basically a 5-month appointment, but we'll put her in the renewal cycle.
Make a motion to accept the town manager's appointment of Catherine Arbison for the Chelmsford Center of Arts Advisory Board.
Second the motion?
Here, a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We have a set of executive session minutes. I don't know if there's any reason we need to hold these. Is there, Paul, that you're aware of?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So we can approve them and release.
Make a motion to approve the executive session minutes of January 8th, 2018 to be released.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments, corrections? All in favor?
I just want to make sure, you and I went back and forth on this, that it reads clear. Second paragraph on the attorney's fees. It just reads that, make sure that's clear. Yes?
You agree with what, the way it's,
Yeah.
okay, good. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. You have a question?
No, I just said aye.
Okay. All right, we are to Selectmen Liaison Reports and Referrals. Glenn, we'll start with you.
You're gonna talk about the EDC meeting?
You can do it if you'd like, and I'll
Um,
add to it if you miss
We
it.
both attended the EDC meeting, and they were getting close to coming up with the final logo area for the 129 area, but there was a suggestion made by Paul that perhaps they overlooked the fact that the name Chelmsford should be in there, since you have no idea where the location is at all. So it's kind of gone back, and we're gonna come back with some takeoffs on that, and hopefully that'll be coming to a close with final solution soon. So that was about it.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay. Laura?
Let's see, the Friendship Park Inputs Advisory Group has actually conducted their first public input session this evening, and for their, looking at the draft plan of their playground, and there will be another public input session on February 27th at 6 p.m. at the Senior Center. So it looked like a lot of fun. I can't wait to start climbing on all those climbers.
Okay, you gonna help them build it?
I should definitely sign up for that. I didn't see the sign up for that yet,
Oh,
but
okay.
we'll be there. That's all I have for tonight.
Okay, Ken?
I don't think I have anything.
Okay, George?
No, I just want to wish everybody, hope everybody has a happy Valentine's Day.
Okay.
A real sweetheart, George.
Yeah, thank you.
Want to give a shout out to the police for their new accredited, the next.
That's mine.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Jeez.
Sorry.
Oh, boy. All right, well, since Ken already started to spill the beans, the police department was recently, received their reaccreditation, which is a big deal. There's only about 70 municipalities that have this accreditation in the state right now. And basically, they come in, somebody comes in and reviews their processes, make sure they're following best practices, that they're consistent with what's the accreditation agency feels is the best way to proceed, have their policies and processes for the police department. And again, it's a big deal. They were first accredited, I believe, in 2009 or thereabouts, and
Yeah,
they've
they got
been
their certification, then
Certi-
2 years later, they got accredited.
right. And then and they've been reaccredited a couple of times since then. So it is a big deal to them. It's a big deal to us. It also helps as far as our insurance, because there's less likelihood that we would have lawsuits or other incidents like that. So again, congratulations to them, to the chief, to the deputy chief, and to the entire force. They do a good job, and they keep us safe. So we thank them for that. So that's all I have for this evening. Do you have any press questions? We do not. Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.